Hello, and welcome to Knowledge Crusaders. I'm Guy, and today we're learning about Feudal Japan, a period in Japan's history lasting from the late 12th century to the late 16th century. First, let's talk about Japan's geography. Japan is an archipelago, a group of islands located in the Pacific. It is made up of 4 major islands. From north to south they are Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. Honshu is the largest, and it is now referred to as the Japanese mainland. The weather in Japan is generally temperate, and it has 4 distinct seasons. A very important aspect of Japanese society is the class structure, which is best organized into a pyramid in which the higher classes would be at the top, and would consequently be smaller, and the lower classes would be at the bottom, and would be much larger. At the very bottom of the pyramid were the burakumin, which was made up of several groups, including an ethnic minority that dealt in unclean jobs such as butchering, a group of prostitutes known as the geisha, and traveling actors and bards. Above the burakumin was the merchant class, which in many societies is of a much higher status due to their vast amounts of wealth. But in Japan, material value isn't highly regarded, and instead people are judged based on their morality and honor, and merchants were perceived to have neither of these, and are therefore of a much lower ranking. Above the merchants were the artisans, who were craftsmen, basically. And above the artisans were the farmers, who were highly regarded because they produced food for all Japanese citizens. Above the farmers were the samurai, which was a class entirely composed of elite military units, the samurai. And at the very top of the pyramid were the shoguns and the emperors, being only one shogun and one emperor at a time. The shogun was the supreme military commander and essentially led Japan as their leader. The emperor acted only as a figurehead, but he had still commanded vast amounts of wealth and honor, and therefore was of such a high status. To become a samurai, one had to be born within the samurai class, and they were trained from a very young age. They were not only trained in the arts of war, but they were also highly educated, and were trained in the arts, such as poetry and painting. The samurai followed a code known as Bushido, also known as the Way of the Warrior, and had 8 basic virtues, the first being rectitude of justice, which is described as one's power to decide upon a course of conduct in accordance with reason, without wavering to die when to die is right, and to strike when to strike is right. So basically being able to make good judgments. Some of the other ones were courage, benevolence, or mercy, because the samurai were not only supposed to be great warriors, but they were also supposed to be symbols of morality to which the other classes could look up to as an example. Politeness, honesty and sincerity, honor, loyalty to their shogun and to daimyos, which were samurai of a higher status which functioned as lords and led lower ranking samurai, and the last being character and self-control. Honor was a very important aspect of Japanese society, and part of this was a practice known as seppuku, which was used to preserve one's honor or to regain lost honor. Seppuku was when one would commit suicide by self-disembowelment. Oftentimes, older samurai who had finished their services and were no longer especially useful in battle would commit seppuku so that they could preserve their own honor, since it was considered dishonorable to die from things such as old age and disease. Or if a samurai had gone against Bushido and had lost some of their honor, they would commit seppuku in an attempt to regain this honor. Later on, a person called the kaishakunin was added to this practice. The kaishakunin's job was to decapitate the person committing seppuku so that they would not have to feel the full pain of disembowelment. This only occurred in the more honorable versions, though, when a samurai was trying to preserve his honor rather than regain lost honor. For if they were dishonored, they were supposed to endure the pain as part of regaining their honor. The kaishakunin would try to not completely decapitate the samurai, as that was also dishonorable. The head had to hang on by a piece of flesh, or else the samurai would not preserve his honor and the Kaishikunin would be dishonored himself. The samurai had a very intricate set of armor. The helmet had empty holders on either side, which would have been used as a front crest or a helm, and they had a hair pommel. A face mask was also used, and it was decorated with very ugly features in an attempt to scare off enemies. Extra protection was provided by a neck curtain of jointed metal and shoulder guards made from small plates laced together with silk braids, which allowed for movement but still offered protection. The main body section is referred to as a do, and it was made up of a series of plates or lamellae, which were little oblong-shaped pieces of steel that were linked together with strips of leather and were covered with layers of lacquer. Thigh guards and calf guards were also used, with a combination of chainmail and plates to protect the lower body. And underneath his armor, the samurai would wear a loose-fitting one-piece garment and a kimono and baggy pants. The samurai were well known for their blade, called the katana. It was a long, one-sided blade that was curved and was very efficient at hacking opponents. They later carried two other blades, the wakazaki, which was a smaller version of the katana, and the tanto, which was essentially a katana that was the size of a large knife. The katana was not only the samurai's weapon, but it was a mark of honor, respect, and spirituality, and it identified the samurai and contrasted them with all the other classes within Japanese society. The Kamakura period began in 1185 when the Minamoto clan defeated the Taira clan and installed their Bakufu shogunal rule, Bakufu meaning tent government. It was during this period that the Mongols attempted to invade Japan, but ultimately failed due to a sudden typhoon known as the kamikaze, or noble wind. After the Minamoto clan fell, the Ashikage clan came to power from 1336 to 1573 with their Muromachi Bakufu. The third Ashikage shogun, Yoshimitsu, ordered the construction of the Golden Pavilion, or Kimakuji, which is a very important monument in Japan. The Warring States period consisted of numerous daimyo owning very small territories competing for land with one another in an attempt to try and rule Japan as a whole. This went on for about a century, until the rise of Oda Nobunaga, who would finally unify Japan. Nobunaga was a minor daimyo who embarked on a ruthless campaign for control that culminated with the removal of the last Ashikaga shogun. It was during his watch that Europeans first arrived in Japan, and he took full advantage of the presence. Through trade, he was able to acquire firearms, which he used to overpower enemy samurai and conquer all of Japan. After Nobunaga, one of his loyal vassals, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, came to power. He was obsessed with power, and he led 2 invasions of Korea, although both failed, and he even schemed to make the Philippines, China, and India part of his empire. He also executed Christian missionaries and pushed them out of his empire. After Hideyoshi's death, another power struggle formed. The side led by Tokugawa Ieyasu prevailed, and 300 years of peace were formed in the Edo period. Before the Edo period, Edo was a small and insignificant fishing village, but after the Tokugawa Bafuku began, Edo became the center of political and cultural life, and became the capital of the empire. For the first time in centuries, Japan was relatively peaceful, and the strict policies of Ieyasu and subsequent shoguns resulted in a golden age. To maintain this, a sakoku, or closed country policy, was put into place, and in this policy, the Spanish, British, and Portuguese were all pushed out of Japan, Christianity was banned, and Japanese Christians were hunted down and persecuted. There was a large cultural change during the Edo period. Since it was a period of peace, the samurai often did not have work, and this resulted in them borrowing money from merchants and often being impoverished. Although they still remained the technical highest class, society thought differently, as they were becoming lower and lower on the food chain. In 1853, Commodore Matthew Perry from the United States entered Edo Bay, and he threatened to fire if the closed country policy was not dissolved. Japan agreed, and this resulted in the beginning of the Meiji Restoration, in which Emperor Meiji removed the shogun from power, and instead the emperors gained power, the samurai were dissolved and the closed country policy was ended. And this resulted in the modernization of Japan.